Over on my Substack, I talk a lot about styling over shopping and how this can really help us to grow and evolve our personal style. But a big part of this is also knowing the right pieces to add into your wardrobe. And I thought today, on this theme, we could talk about items that you will always regret buying for your closet. If you enjoy this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you're new. And if there are any other purchase regrets that you think you need to share with everyone, please drop those down in the comment section below. I think it'd be really fun to read through what everyone else has kind of found just never really works out for them. The very first clothing item I will always regret buying are basics that are not my basics. And this is something I've been talking about a lot recently, but essentially you might find those lists that aggregate all of the wardrobe staples that we should have in our closets, and you look at it and you go, okay, I need to buy a trench coat, I need to buy a blazer, I need to buy a white tee, I need to buy a pair of black trousers. But before you do this, make sure that you're stopping to question whether these items are reflective of your lifestyle, of your actual style, and are clothing items that you have known to actually lean on in the past. Sometimes, yes, we have to experiment to find new things that we really like, but often we know ourselves. And I think if you have that thought in the back of your head, oh, I'm buying this because it's a staple, because I should own it, it's probably a bad idea. A couple of examples from my own wardrobe would have to be a denim jacket. Yes, this is a classic piece, but I personally just never reach for it. I tend to favor something like a chore jacket or a barn field jacket instead. That just really kind of hits that sweet spot of relaxed transitional season weight jacket for me. Another item that I just never wear are really, really chunky shoes. So think chunky sandals. These are such a workhorse in so many wardrobes, but in mine, it just feels like there's a little bit too much weight at my feet, and I always feel like my outfits are a little bit off balance. Sometimes they work for wrong shoe theory, but it's a very seldom reach for item, so it doesn't make it a staple for me. Definitely not something that I am going to be focusing on when I'm adding new shoes into my wardrobe moving forward. If you can hear the rain in the background, that is because it is so gloomy today in Sydney and it is pouring outside, which I think brings us nicely to the next item that we'll always regret buying, and that is itchy knitwear. Basically clothing that just does not feel nice to wear, doesn't feel nice against your skin, and it could extend beyond knitwear to other fabrications for you as well. I would say that my skin is mildly sensitive, and I know when I've bought things that don't feel really comfortable, soft, and just quite plush against my skin, I'm not going to reach for them. I'm always going to favor something else in my wardrobe. And that's kind of the question is, if you had the opportunity to wear an item, are you going to reach for something else instead? And for me, those have always ended up being the purchases that have not been worth it. Itchy knitwear really falls into this category, as does items that do not suit my actual life and are more suited for my fantasy life. And that's a little bonus one for you. This next one is very specific, but clothing that makes you feel self-conscious. And this could mean so many different things. It could be clothing that has a really interesting silhouette that you love the idea of in theory, but when you put it on, it feels almost like a costume, or it just feels a little bit too loud. So you're constantly just aware of your own presence and what you're wearing. But it also could just be the fit of clothing as well. For me, I know that really kind of bodycon clothing makes me feel incredibly self-conscious. And before you come at me in the comments and say, but you're slim, that is totally irrelevant. I know I don't feel comfortable or confident when I'm wearing something that is incredibly tight. There are a few exceptions. So I know as a rule that this is clothing that I should probably avoid, or if I am adding it into my wardrobe, being sure that I can style it in ways that I feel really comfortable in. And here's the thing, when you don't feel comfortable in your clothing, other people will notice because you're not going to feel confident, you're going to shrink into yourself a little bit more, and it's really going to show. We always look our best when we feel the most confident in what we're wearing, regardless of whether it's considered trendy or stylish or not. Kind of a little bit of a segue from my very first point about basics that aren't your basics, but minimalist staples that are too plain to feel special is another one. Now here's the thing, once you've built up kind of the base, the groundwork, the foundation of your wardrobe, if you continue to add in those really simplistic items, what you're going to find is that your wardrobe lacks personality and it's going to feel really unexciting. It's going to feel like it's devoid of personality, and really understanding the little details that you are drawn to is a great way to bring that back in. It adds in a tactile quality, it adds in dimension, adds in visual interest, but also it is so much more unique to you. And this is a really simple way to showcase those little flourishes that you personally love. And maybe no one else notices them, but it ends up making that basic item feel just that little bit more special. So thinking about a basic white tee, this could be elevated through the fit, or maybe you've got some interesting texture like a rib texture or even a pointelle. And there's also levels to this as well in terms of dialing up those elements and dialing them down. So for example, I personally see pointelle as being quite kind of sweet and feminine, especially when it's combined with a lace trim around the neckline and the sleeves. You can dial this down and make it feel a little bit more classic and minimal with a feminine edge by opting for a style that has a smooth trim. So it still has the pointelle fabrication that brings in that texture and that interest, but it doesn't read as too sweet. Now, obviously this is a very detail centric point, but I do think that it makes a difference, and it also changes the way that you look at those items and the way that you style them in practice. This next one is very specific to me, but some of you might be able to relate, and that is shoes that have an ankle strap. Now, I actually recently bought a pair of sandals with an ankle strap, which I reviewed in this video, which I'm going to pop up in the cards. And one of the things I reflected on there was that I wondered if I could turn them into a sling bag, as that would actually make the design wearable for me. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the fact that our proportions are all incredibly different. So I'm 5'8" or 172 centimeters tall, and I have quite short legs for my height. I've got a much longer torso, whereas there are other girls who are the same height as me or even shorter than me who've got longer legs than I do and a shorter torso. And this really impacts the way that clothing looks on you and maybe the way that you will actually style the clothing on your body. And I know when I bring a shoe that cuts me off at the ankle, it's creating an additional break, which in effect shortens my legs even more, particularly if I'm wearing the wrong items. There are situations that I can make it work, like by wearing a mini skirt or a trouser, dress, or skirt that covers the ankle strap, but I don't think we should have to work that hard in order for an item to feel good to wear. And listen, I'm sure I'll end up buying another pair of ankle strap shoes in the future, but I'll do that knowing that the wear is going to be restricted to very specific items. In a very similar vein, buying items that have the wrong rise. Now, I think it'd be really misleading when you're shopping online and you're looking for jeans and you see some say low rise, some say mid rise, and some say high rise. But the detail you actually need to be looking at is the rise measurement itself, because a low rise on me might be a mid rise or even a high rise on you, depending on your height and also your proportions, the length of your torso. So do keep that in mind. And actually, if you're here for some nostalgia, if you go and look back at the rise from the 2000s for a low rise versus a high rise, you will be shocked, because what was considered a high rise for us back then is technically a mid rise bordering on low rise in some circumstances. It's really, really fascinating how these things have changed and evolved over time. So to my point, you'll find if you buy an item that has the wrong rise for you, that it's not going to make you feel your best. And so you're probably not going to reach for it that often. And it's why I recommend understanding the measurements, those ideal measurements that really work for you. Okay, this next one is kind of funny because of the sweater that I'm wearing, but basically tops that have sleeves that are either too awkward or impossible to tuck into your existing jackets or coats. And this is particularly worth noting if it's an item that you're going to be wearing in a situation where you need to layer something over the top of it. You should never have to buy something in order to make a new purchase work in your wardrobe. And I think also this kind of comes down to that practicality, that ease of wear, things feeling effortless and just approachable. When things feel too difficult, too challenging, there's a barrier to entry, we're always going to look for the easy way out. Even if we want to present as well dressed, I would say for many of us, we also want to limit the amount of time that we have to spend thinking about how we're going to construct our outfit. And if we're sitting there going, but it's a bit too chilly, how am I going to make this top work? Because the sleeves just don't fit into any of my jackets. This then becomes a question of, do you layer underneath it? Can you layer underneath it? Can you drape something over your shoulders? What are you going to pair with it? It just sounds like a little bit too much work. And also, side note, I did, at the time that I did my Substack review, film a actual YouTube review, which I've never gotten around to editing. If you're curious to see it, it's a lot more top line, no measurements, but if you would like to see it, please please let me know in the comments because I feel like I need to do something with all that footage. Next item you'll probably end up regretting buying is items that feel like a bold fashion risk. And there's a very specific jacket that kind of comes to mind for me, but this could be so many items. It is a chartreuse suede fringe jacket. This is so many things all rolled into one. It's got the Western element, it's got the suede, it's also got the chartreuse green, so that kind of has this very bold element because it's not a stereotypical classic neutral hue. And yes, there will be people for whom an item like that is a wardrobe hero, something that they use to just elevate and lift all of their outfits, but that won't be the case for everyone. And that's an example of an item that I know that if I was to bring it into my own wardrobe, I would probably never reach for it. Essentially, this is an item that is going to feel really outside of your comfort zone. Like you need to be wearing very specific sort of an outfit to make it work. Maybe it also is a little bit more high maintenance in terms of the fabrication. So you want to be wearing it in a scenario where you know you can keep it looking and feeling pristine, but there are kind of a few barriers to entry, so really it should be a no. Okay, so next, clothing that you bought to fix a style rut. Let me tell you that shopping for something new is never going to solve the problems that you have with your wardrobe. Actually experimenting, engaging in wardrobe playtime, and understanding what you do and don't like will. From there, you can add in pieces that are going to actually bring something to your closet, bring something to your style, and enhance what you already have. But if you're buying something as a quick fix that you think will lift and elevate all of your outfits, maybe because it is a trending piece like suede jackets wear or the suede bag, leopard ballerinas seem to be having a moment, you will find that you're going to come away feeling very unsatisfied and also disappointed because the actual root cause of the style rut hasn't been addressed. I think if we all had more time to plan our wardrobes, we'd be worrying less about our personal style and just enjoying the clothes that we had. And the final one are colors that you just never wear. And this isn't to inhibit or restrict any experimentation when it comes to introducing new colors into your wardrobe, but I guess instead to create a little bit more awareness around the colors that we do bring into our closet. For example, I know that orange is a color that I just never ever wear. So I'm not going to go out and buy something in orange, even if I absolutely love the silhouette. Even if it's a muted orange, I know that I'm not going to reach for it. Blue items, on the other hand, that have kind of a dustiness to them, I really appreciate. I also really love a navy. Green is another color that I really struggle with, and I tend to try and introduce it in very limited quantities because I do love the color green, but I sometimes find it challenging to execute in my outfits because I have an olive undertone. So depending on how fair or tan I am, which I don't spend a lot of time in the sun these days, it really does change the way that colors look against my complexion. I think also it kind of just highlights the need to go really slowly when you're bringing in color and really understand your undertone and whether you prefer kind of warm or cooler items, and creating a bit of a consistency in your wardrobe that really does help. I'm going to wrap things up here because it's getting so gloomy outside. Thank you so much if you've made it to the end of this video. I hope that it's come across as feeling very cozy rather than really dark. I would love to know if there are things that you particularly avoid buying because they always result in shopping regrets. Please drop those down in the comment section below. A huge thank you for spending some of your day with me. I'm so incredibly grateful. As mentioned earlier, if you're new here and you want to see more from me, styling advice, ways to remix your wardrobe, and also brand reviews, then please do subscribe, and I will see you next week with a brand new one. See you very soon. Bye.